Still waiting to have that conversation with Sean.
Well, hello, guys. Howard Moore, Stone Monkey. What are you guys doing? Yeah, I was just listening on into a little bit of Try Thinking's channel. Bev and those clowns are having a shit fit because nobody will come talk to them. It's funny. They keep talking about putting me against Mobius, which is like throwing a kitten in a lion's den. I don't think Mobius would fare very well, but regardless. And I have made the server available to Mobius. I've made a special room where nobody but Mobius and I could be in it. I'll let Mobius bring anybody he wants to bring with him other than Bev. And the answer is no. They want to continue to insist that I have to come to Bev's server. Yeah, that'll happen about the time hell freezes over. But anyway, welcome everybody. This is kind of an impromptu, got no agenda whatsoever live stream. And anybody that feels like joining in the Discord 24/7 general chat, hop on in here. We might even listen to a little bit of Bev's poor mouthing. Hello, Professor Phil. Says, Jokley thinks Wolfie and I are at loggerheads over Corey Ellis. Really? Now what's that idiot's got gone and done? Jesus. Oakley has probably the most complete and thorough misunderstanding of what Coriolis is of anyone that I know of. He is absolutely amazing. Actually, his own graphic, when you look at it, he pulls that silly little thing out of Wikipedia, the little disc that's rotating. And if you think about what he's showing you, it absolutely debunks everything he's saying. Yes, an object moving in a rotating frame of reference is going to curve. You bet you it does. That same object moving as seen in an inertial frame is not. It's going in a straight line. That same object, if you make the reference frame the object itself, is not moving at all. I don't know how Oakley can get as screwed up as he does. But that just shows you that if you're flying an airplane and you're trying to go from point A to point B and follow a track across the ground, you can't put up with that curvature. You've got to fly the airplane to stay over the course over the ground. That means you would be turning opposite the direction that little cartoon shows the ball curving. And that then, in a non-inertial frame of reference, looks like a straight line. In the inertial frame, it looks like a curved line. And in the frame of reference that's the airplane itself, it looks like something else is moving. The airplane's standing still. How hard is that? But, the big problem these guys have is number one, they don't understand reference frames. Not a one of them. They still, to this day, think that you actually can physically leave one reference frame and physically go into some other reference frame. Like going out of your kitchen into your den. They just don't get it. Anyway. That's pretty funny. I'll have to take a look and see what Oakley has said. Which video is it on, Phil? Give me a hint. I'd love to see it. Wolfie and I certainly don't disagree. He understands how it works just like I do. Realize that when you're talking about an airplane, the Coriolis force is minuscule. It is so tiny. Other effects like wind are 100 times as large as the Coriolis effect is. Coriolis is going to get lost in the noise. And there is no day that I've ever flown in the 4,500 hours I've got in the pilot seat where there's no wind aloft. There's always wind, and it's always pushing you one way or the other. No matter what. Yeah, we got 18 people watching for no good reason. And out of the clear blue because I didn't make any announcements. We might have to go back and listen to a little bit of Bev. Now, he'll probably, if I did that, he'd probably bitch and whine about stealing his content. So maybe I better not do that. But I can just tell you what I was hearing. It's a lot of whining about none of the Globe people wanting to come over and talk to him. Why the hell would I want to go talk to those guys in that server after the way those clowns have treated us? Not a chance. Phil says Oakley's last two videos. I don't know. You guys want to watch those? We might do that. That might be fun. Let's just see. Where can I find Oakley? I'm sure he must be around here somewhere. There we go. Well, let's see. Here's one. You say the last two, huh, Phil? Here is one some 9 hours ago. Let me just see where we're at here.
It's into the building. The rock actually keeps going and it turns into the building.
I don't know if that's the one or not, but we'll see. Let's see how I can share that screen. Shouldn't be that difficult. It would be like that, I think. So, just for fun, let's see what Oakley's up to here. I'll turn the audio on so you guys can hear it too.
No! If only I could protect myself from the truth of the melted buildings, I'd have a fulfilled life.
In the ancient world, it governs everything, and we're not allowed to know about it. So that's why they call it. That's why they call it ether.
I know about it.
Is the wrong word to describe it. Ether is the wrong word. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, let's see. I don't know where it would be in here. Move forward a little bit and see what they're talking. See what Oakley's talking about.
This rock is not a building, you stupid idiot.
Yeah. Excellent, Nathan. Rocks are not buildings. I don't know, Phil. This one doesn't look too promising. Let's see what we can do. Maybe check out a different one. Well, I hate that music. Let me mute that mess. Let's see where we're going here.
It doesn't matter what he says, it matters what he validates by way of observing a phenomena, formulating the hypothesis, and then performing an experiment. Validate that which he assumed caused the effect. If he's got that, that would be science, then that's what I'm interested in.
Which for more simplistic is like.
I'm just skipping through this a little bit, see if we can find something.
Like sound balls across your.
But we're still to get to what it is.
Doesn't near the end, huh?
It's turned into dirt, pulverized. It's all dried up now. But at one time, it was something.
Cross-functional work can be complicated, but manage.
And mute that mess. Let's see. I'll turn the screen back on. Skip ads, yes, please.
Now stop! You got into this rhythm of just constantly going.
Stuff. I've already studied all of it. So this is beyond. They're barely starting to understand this, and I think they're afraid of it in some cases. They're not seeing it, or they're starting to see it barely.
I've seen Tartaria.
Well,
that's not true.
Yeah, just so you know.
I've seen Tartaria.
They're not claiming.
Trump this 1,000 times. Yet I don't have enough evidence to really come forward with what I'm speculating about.
uh-oh.
So I'll tell you how little evidence you have for what your ultraviolet you have for what you're postulating.
Exactly.
Number
Brian's
two,
got way more evidence to the shite he speaks than you have. Get that clear.
Real quick.
I just want to brag about how long ago this is covered by us before you do chocolate. So, I mean, just out of interest, Ultraviolet, how long have you been looking at this subject?
I don't know what these guys are on about. Doesn't seem to be anything interesting.
Sorry about that.
Sure.
What was that? What'd you
Just
say?
how long have you been looking into this?
I discovered when the buildings cried like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. I'll have to go through those videos, Phil, and see if I can find what you're talking about. Unless you got a timestamp for me. because it's not showing up immediately. I don't want to spend any more time listening to Mr. Jokley than I absolutely have to. So there you have that.
You should be able.
But we might go back, I don't know, we could listen to a little bit of Bev, I suppose. Although, who really cares? He's still alive, so I guess I won't do that. Anyway, you guys hop in the Discord. Anybody that wants to come in. I've had a bit of an exchange back and forth with Mobius about LIGO. And I've only asked him about 3 or 4 questions, and he refuses to answer any of them. Question number 1, are the elevations provided in the LIGO as-built drawings accurate, or are they not? That's a good question. Are those tubes at LIGO straight or not? That's another good question. I don't know why these are hard for him to answer, but they seem to be a bit impossible. Number 3, is the distance from the bottom of the LIGO tube down to the concrete consistent? Now, I'll be the guy that says, who knows? We don't have that data. We're not really sure. I'm not able to find any place where they've actually measured the distance from the tube, the LIGO tubes, down to the concrete pad. The pad certainly shows curvature. The pad was poured exactly as you would expect it to be poured to take into account the curvature of the earth. All 4 of the pads. But we have no guarantee that the LIGO tube is actually following that pad. So I'll be the first one to point that out. Now, that's something that could go and be investigated very easily. According to Bev, Rakia Life is best buddies with the gate guard or some damn body down there. Surely he could go down and walk down to or drive down to the center of the damn tube and measure the height of the thing. If it's still a foot above the tube, Flat Earth's got a problem. But I got a feeling they're not going to do that. I got a feeling they don't want anything to do with that at all. It's going to show the same thing that the Lake Pontchartrain data shows. All that stuff that Jesse Kozlowski collected. Using the same technique, basically, differential GPS. So where are you guys at, Bev? I mean, here I sit. I'm waiting on you. Mobius is free to join the channel. I've got a room sitting right here that he can come in right now, and we'll talk about LIGO. Bring SC Montreal along, too. I'd love to talk to him. What's going on? Barryon says Mobius is just twisted. No, he's just a dumbass kid, Barryon. That's all. Mobius is a guy that has clearly no engineering training. The guy has no construction experience. Everything about this is a mystery to him. Hey, there's Doofus. What's up, man? Let me get off mute here and I'll be able to hear you. Give me an audio check, Doofus. We'll get him in here in a second, folks. Unless my Discord's doing something stupid, but it, that happens once in a while.
Oh, now I can. I was just asking you in the text whether or not you're supposed to be muted.
Yeah. I pushed an odd number of buttons. Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, you were deafened, I saw. It was interesting. Hi.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, you always have to push an even number of buttons. If you push an odd number, you get a mistake.
Well, now I'm hearing myself. Oops. Got YouTube turned on.
Yeah. Yeah, mute the YouTube feed. That'll fix that.
Well, I hear you were talking about SE momentarily. We just had a wonderful conversation earlier today.
You and SE?
Oh, yes. Yes, about evolution and he and Rakia's opinion of it. Keep reminding them that their viewpoint on evolution doesn't match what's actually stated about evolution. Of course, then they call me a liar. That's fun.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of the way they operate, isn't it?
Yep, seems that way.
All I know is evolution
nothing terribly exciting to report as of yet.
Evolution doesn't seem to have served either one of those two very well.
Okay, that's funny.
No wonder they're mad about it. Yeah, I was just talking about Mobius and some of that crowd. I heard Bev over there a while ago whining and complaining that none of the Globers will come over and talk to him, and which I find funny. But Mobius is, and well, they all have. Bev, Mobius, all have been after me to come and debate Mobius about LIGO. And I said, fine, I'll debate Mobius, but I'll do it on my channel. I've even got a room down here set up. You probably can't even see it. It's private. Where if he ever does show up, I'll be glad to take him. Just he and I can go in there and have a nice little talk about all of his horrible misunderstandings.
Yep. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to have his peanut gallery available to back him up and say words as soon as it's no longer a one-on-one.
Exactly. He doesn't want them. He has no interest in a one-on-one. If you're listening, Mobius, the challenge is out there, buddy. Bring it. Here we sit. We'll leave Doofus by himself for a while, and you and I'll go into this room down here that I set up. Its name is Mobius. And nobody can get in there except by my permission. So it's not like you're going to get jumped on by 10 people, like will happen if I come over there. I've done that before, and I'm not doing it again.
Yep. Stop chewing your shit. Oops, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, anybody out there that wants to join us, please do jump in. I just thought since Bev was alive, had his channel live, and was whining and complaining about people not coming to talk, I'd give Mobius a place to come and talk. So here it is. What's stopping you? Well, I think we know what's stopping them.
Yeah, didn't they do the same kind of thing with Tommy Gronwald? However
Yeah.
that's pronounced.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. Exactly.
Never going to be able to Nordic vowels. It's never going to happen.
Hey, PhD Tony and IB Hunter, welcome, gentlemen.
Hello, hello.
How you been? Sorry, Tony.
No, I was just apologising for talking at the same time as the other new guest, or at least it seemed to me like that. But how are you all?
I'm good.
Chilling.
It seems that
All cool and all.
it seems, Tony, that people still have some strange idea that the Earth is flat.
Well, they're wrong. I mean, you know, there's no law that says you have to be right, but to go through life being, you know, publicly and demonstrably wrong seems a little, you know, self-defeating. But you know, everybody has to have a hobby, I suppose, and publicly embarrassing yourself seems to be flat earthers.
Yeah, very much so.
Hello. But this quote I know, it makes me right.
Yeah, there's a, you know, the simple fact is that a lot of their misunderstandings are based on the fact that they don't really have any experience of science or how to do science or how to understand scientific reasoning. So they just, you know, they assume that anybody can do science, and, you know, and that if some scientist says something at a dinner party, it's just as valid as what that scientist says in peer-reviewed publications. No, they're completely different, and but flat earthers can't really get their head around the distinction, so they run around quote mining.
Oops.
And I put everybody to sleep.
No, I was off checking some audio settings. I forgot to turn off the speakers here. I don't think it was making much of an echo, but it could. So got that fixed. Got that fixed now.
All right, excellent.
I mean, no, they don't know how to do science, Tony. None of them have done it. They don't know where to start.
Which is fine. I mean, most people don't know how to do science and don't know how science is done. On the other hand, you know, in that sort of situation, you generally leave the performance of science to people who are trained in it. You know, just like you would leave surgery to surgeons or piloting to pilots, you know, or mechanics, you know, mechanical engineering to mechanical engineers. You leave performing these tasks to people who are actually skilled in those tasks. But the flat earthers apparently imagine that they can do anything they set their mind to.
And which, in many cases, would be true, but you have to go and get the training first.
Yeah, and I mean, I've said this a couple of times, but it's the distinction between, technically it's the distinction between a barbaric society and a civilized society. The technical definition, or at least one of the technical definitions I've come across, is in a barbaric society, one person can acquire all the skills that are necessary to operate that society. But in a civilized society, it's just not possible. There's not enough time. You can't do it. So, you know, I could, if I stopped now and dedicated myself to, you know, studying how to pilot a plane, I could almost certainly get that skill, but then I'd need to know how to, you know, pilot a ship. You know, the intricacies of electrical engineering. It's just not possible to acquire all of these skills at the moment. One person can't do it. And it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that people like Kyle Adams are dedicating their lives to trying to rebuild science from the ground up with no understanding of what they're doing. I mean, they're pissing their lives away.
That is a fact. I mean, everyone can't discover for themselves everything.
Yeah.
No one can discover much of anything all by himself when it gets really right down to it. We have to count on all of the work that's gone before us.
Exactly. Other people other people here are welcome to speak. I just speak a lot, and I tend to find that Diffus and IB Hunter have gone very quiet, and indeed muted themselves. You're welcome to speak, guys.
I just make noise. I have noise going on here every now and then. But to your point though, anybody can do science to a certain degree. They don't have to be on the cutting edge, but anybody can take a measurement. They can measure things about the Earth for themselves. All they have to do is put forth the effort of learning what they should expect to get, and if the measurement method they're going to use will result in an accuracy enough to be able to detect what they should be able to get.
Yeah, but that in itself requires technical understanding of what they're trying to do.
Right, but simple rotation, and then figuring out that you should be able to measure centrifugal force. You could calculate how much centrifugal force you can expect to get, and then determine on if you can get a scale that's accurate enough to measure that. That doesn't require a tremendous amount of knowledge or a lot of background or anything. It just requires a little bit of effort. And an ordinary person could do that. It's not outside the realm for an ordinary person to measure something like that. Now, to be able to get it to the precision needed for real scientific experiments and stuff like that, that requires a whole nother level of expertise. But for simple stuff, ordinary people can do a lot of things. And for some reason, a lot of people don't believe that the shape of the Earth or the rotation of the Earth is capable of being measured by the average ordinary person. But it can be.
There's a problem with asking them to calculate what they should expect to measure, and that is, of course, many of them say that math isn't reality, so I can't calculate things that I should expect to measure, which is hilarious because a lot of these people actually build things and they do that very thing. But never mind that. They also have a problem as long as there is an error bar, they assume the measurement is fake, even if the error bar is very small. And I mean, you're dealing with people that have absolutely no desire to actually measure anything. That's very clearly stated by their actions.
Well,
right. You have to have somebody that's actually really seeking the truth or really trying to figure it out. If they're really trying to do that, then they can, if they put forth the effort.
Yeah. Well, I had a discussion with a Flurf on Blue's server some time ago who steadfastly maintained that there is no such thing, that there are no such things as error bars. He was a builder, and he maintained that when he built something, it was exact, always.
Really?
That may be, yeah, that's pretty foolish.
Obviously, hasn't worked for a machine shop for sure.
Yeah. Well, it was a very strange conversation, but when you get into that sort of discussion, it's very difficult to make headway. I was introducing the concept of gravimetric surveying as the tool in mineral exploration, and one of them said, no, mineral companies just dig holes in random locations.
Well, that sounds awful productive.
Well, I mean, that sort of strategy is okay if you've already discovered an ore lode, like a coal seam or something like that, and you want to know whether or not it branches off to the left or the right or straight ahead or whatever. You might dig a hole and see. right? You'll just you'll do speculative drilling. It's fine. So my reconstruction is that he saw this happening on a mineral extraction site that he worked on, and he assumes that's how the seams are located in the first place, and it absolutely isn't.
No, you're talking about lots of money here. Drilling,
yeah, exactly.
Drilling one hole is worth a lot of money. They aren't in general just going to go out and start poking holes in the ground for the hell of it just to see what's down there. That's crazy.
Especially offshore. That multiplies the cost of everything by a tremendous amount.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there are, so they use a lot of surveying techniques. Two of them are magnetotelluric surveying. So we use electrical signals to try and determine sort of conductivity as a function of depth. And the other one is gravimetric, and they're independent. They give different results. So anybody trying to make the gravity is electromagnetic argument, well, we look at that and we don't see it. So they just don't understand reality, and when you try and educate them about reality, they'll just tell you you're wrong.
You'd be interested in a couple of discussions I had just recently on the Earth Awakenings channel. I went on with Riding on Eggshells, and we were discussing marine survey. And in the last Saturday, we would discuss like gyro compasses and stuff.
Okay,
But
well,
we jumped
marine
into a lot of sonar work and everything, including magnetometers and all.
Well, marine surveying is actually quite an interesting field, because those global maps you see of the ocean floor, those are largely reconstructed using sea surface height. So what you do is you use altimetry to measure sea surface height, and where there's an underwater mountain range, the water will pile up over it, and it will be higher because the gravitational attraction of the mountains is pulling the water up over it. And you blend that satellite altimetry data with the seafloor mapping data in order to improve the resolution you achieve. But when they say look, water is always flat, no, it isn't. It does respond to the gravity of nearby objects. We can measure it, and indeed we use it to map the ocean floor. So you just it on every level, every example that they bring up, they just don't understand where the cutting edge of science is, or how far it is away from where they're at.
They see the surface level of it, and they don't look any deeper into it other than that surface little high level understanding, the general public understanding a lot of times, and don't dig into it any further.
Yeah. I might let somebody else, get a word in edgeways.
Yeah.
No, I'm enjoying it very much, Tony. How much variation do you actually see in the surface?
So it's of the order of centimeters to tens of centimeters. The sea surface height varies by up to 50 centimeters across the globe. So, but that's due to a multitude of factors. But certainly these gravitational perturbations, they're very broad. They're sort of large, but they're of the order of magnitude of several centimeters. But it's reliable enough, and this is why if you look at Google Earth, for instance, you'll often see in their ocean floor maps, you'll see what look like little snail trails going across them, these weird sort of crinkly bits. Those crinkly bits are the paths of ships doing ocean floor mapping using sonar, right? And they've been overlaid on the gravitational field, which is coarser. It's less sensitive, so it's got a lower spatial resolution than the sonar mapping. So you tend to sort of get these, sort of loose, blurry details, and then somebody will drive a ship, well, somebody will pilot a ship across it, and you'll get this sort of strip of very high resolution data.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. The technology that we have at our fingertips these days.
Even with that, there's even higher resolution stuff where we'll bring like AUVs down and bring it just above the seafloor and use multi-beam bathymetry to get even higher resolution than what the ship could get.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a technical question about that for you. How is the position of the AUV with reference? So obviously you can use GPS on the ship, but you can't use it on the AUV. So how is the position of the AUV relative to the ship determined?
Okay, that's done several ways at the same time. We'll use differential GPS. Get about 5 to 10 centimeters on the GPS on the ship. We have motion sensors on the ship to determine heave, pitch, and roll. And then we'll have basically a USBL system. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's got an array of transducers. It'll send out a ping. It waits for a response back, and it can measure the angle that response came back from and the time delay. So you could get a relative angle and distance. Well, there's a USBL on the AUV that's pinging up to the ship,
right?
So that it could get its position. It also has a fiber optic based IMU, or inertial navigation system, on the ship that's corrected from that acoustic position.
Okay. Because for the acoustics, you have to take into account thermal and salinity gradients and all
right.
That sort of
We drop CTD probes every now and then to get a pretty accurate map of the area, and also the AUV also has a CTD probe on it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
And this is the thing, like, these are technical details that I don't know because I never needed to know them. And it's interesting to hear them, and I hear them and I learn. I don't instantly leap to the conclusion that Khan with George must be lying because I don't understand this.
Well, they don't have any problem leaping to that conclusion. When I say they, I'm talking specifically about the flurfs of the world. Some are worse than others, but they're all bad about it. Every one of them will jump to that conclusion. They don't know it. They don't know anything about it. They've never studied it. They don't understand it. Therefore, you've got to be lying. I don't know how they get there, but that's what they do.
It's sort of when my brother was doing his undergraduate degree, one of his friends was studying law, and he was perfectly okay with lying to win an argument, and then he'd come back later and pretend, and just be civil, pretending that he hadn't just lied to my face, and I was uninterested in talking to him. And I kind of think that people who go around accusing other people of lying all the time do so because they themselves are inherently dishonest.
Yep.
They will lie to win an argument.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Just watch out. Just, my dad always said this. He said, be careful about what another guy's accusing you of, because that's probably what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. It's the classical psychological phenomenon of projection. And, and you see it all the time with the flirts. They'll, they will lie. They will lie all the time, and when they're caught in their lies, they'll just shrug it off and move on. Like it, lawyer, noun, one skilled in circumvention of the law. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well said, Clive Wells.
You got Clive out there? Yeah, I see.
He is out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, Clive, Sean Hawkins, Ace Fox.
String and Use 1 and Sophocles and Stone Monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
I've been seeing some of Doofus's arguments on the gyro compasses, and it's been pretty impressive. I haven't been able to jump on, but he's been holding his own on all of that. He's been doing a good job.
Well, thanks for the compliment. I mean, it's very interesting because it's just one device. They have this problem with this single device showing you that there's nothing else except Earth rotation possible in order for it to work. But what's more interesting is if it works on all longitudes on a single latitude line. The only way that's possible is if the rotation axis is not parallel with anything, up, down, left, or right. It's got to be a curved surface, a spherical Earth. It's just a single device can show you that it's a rotating sphere just by that.
Yeah. And of course, the axis of rotation moves relative to your geographical position. It doesn't move very quickly, but it does change. We can observe it. So.
There's Charlie Welch out there, the one sin, geranianism, door new.
Clive Wells is admitting his plagiarism. He stole that quote of a lawyer from The Devil's Dictionary by Ambrose Bierce.
I think
Ambrose Bierce is an interesting guy. He disappeared in Mexico.
That's happened to a lot of people.
Yeah, well, he did it during one of the U.S.-Mexican wars of the early 20th century, or the Mexican Civil War. I forget which one. Yep. Ambrose Bierce did not steal that from Clive because Clive is not that old. Clive is a relative babe. Barry on, you take that back.
Yeah.
And so, yes, are you still being accused of completely fabricating your Cavendish results, or have they moved on to greener pastures?
Oh no, there's a select few of them that still maintain that I either did it wrong or misinterpreted the results or intentionally falsified it or what have you. And that's okay with me. I don't really care because, as I said from the beginning, I didn't do that damn thing for them. I had no intention of proving anything to them one way or the other. Don't really care.
but it's for the rest of us, it was fascinatingly edifying. Like I actually didn't know about the Cavendish experiment before sort of encountering flat Earth discussions. But it was amazing to see the work, and it's amazing to see the work and effort that went into it, and to produce a good result. It was a spectacular demonstration of sort of how science can be done and how science could be done. I was really, really impressed.
Well, that's what I was hoping that we could do, Tony. I did spend a number of years working in research and development in my misspent youth, and so I know a lot about how experiments have to be, how much care you have to take to do something like that. It's not a spur of the moment type of activity. You don't just wake up and say, "Oh hell, it's Saturday. I think I'll do a Cavendish." No, you won't. You'll just make a mess. Is all. Yeah. You'll screw up some perfectly good trailer hitches, and get nothing as a result.
Exactly so.
But I thought it would be interesting for people that have not had the good fortune or bad fortune, as you care to look at it, that I've experienced in my life, where you get to go through a project from beginning to end. And I wanted everybody to see what really goes into these things. You don't just wander off into the lab with a pile of crap that you picked up out of the back room and try to figure out what you can make out of it. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of engineering effort that goes into the front end of it. If you want to think about it, I always think about it in terms of engineering, obviously, but I wasn't about to build that damn thing until I had a decent set of engineering calculations that said, yes, this thing would work.
Yeah. And I mean, you need to sit down, you need to organize it, and then you need to have the discipline to actually do it. And this is the thing, the degree of discipline and the degree of dedication that is required to sit down, organize it, and see it through to fruition. And there were some impressive technical skills on display with the woodworking, I have to say. So it all round, it was an extremely good illustration of what the Flurfs could be doing and could be achieving if they were interested, if they had that ability. And it's to some extent free, free tuition for people who really don't deserve it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. The woodworking aspect of it was just fun for me because that's what I enjoy doing. And over the years, well, my life, I guess, when it gets right down to it, I've gotten pretty good at that. But it didn't have to be. I mean, you don't have to make a pretty one. You can make the damn thing out of plywood and nails if you want to. That'll work too. But it takes more than just, hanging a dumbbell up in your damn garage and moving some kettle weights around. You're not going to learn a damn thing doing that. Nothing.
Yeah.
And I really wondered how close Cavendish could have gotten it. I've always wondered that. Given the conditions he had to work under, it seemed almost unthinkable that he could have gotten as close as he did. But having gone through it, I totally believe he got that. I see how he could have done it.
Yes. Glidewell says the Flurfs tried to use a frictionless pivot for the torsion wire.
That was one of their goofy ass ideas. That was that guy that calls himself Dr. John D. messing around with Sleeping Warrior. And they came up with a torsion balance that had no torque. They freely fixed it at the top, so the whole you're not developing any torque in the wire. What good is that?
Yes, it does nothing. So it's certainly going to be difficult to use the period of oscillation to achieve anything if there is no oscillation.
Well, if you don't have the oscillation, you don't have the torsion constant.
Yes, exactly.
And if you don't have that, you don't have anything. There's no way to measure the force.
Exactly so.
So that was the problem. What impressed me was how good our understanding of engineering actually is. What impressed me was the fact that I could sit down with nothing more than a spreadsheet and, using the appropriate calculations, predict within a very, very tight range what the oscillation period of a particular arrangement was going to be and how much deflection I could expect.
Yeah.
And I got within like 5%.
Yeah. Well, it's which is exactly right, and I think that sort of a lot of FLIRs don't understand the degree of understanding of these principles that we actually have. We have extremely precise and extremely well explored understanding of the principles of gravitational acceleration. It's not a mystery. Just like we have a very good understanding of why the Earth must be spheroidal, and it is revealing, but also dispiriting just how often they will say, well, reality ought to behave this way, when when what they're saying is completely at odds with our well-established understanding of how reality works.
Yeah. Yeah, they're quite willing to do that.
And just because, and the other pincer at this is, just because they don't understand something, they assume that nobody else understands it.
Yeah, that's the basic premise they operate under. I'm not smart enough or well educated enough to understand it, therefore no one else could either. Well, yeah, that's not right.
I've got a bit of a problem at the moment in that I'm trying to understand how quantum gravimetry actually works, because I'm a bit mystified by it all at the moment. But I'm reading up on it, and I'm trying to get some grasp on it.
Well, you were over my head when you pronounced the words, so I won't spend a lot of my time trying to understand it.
Well, Tony, if you don't mind, you may be able to answer a question I might have about the gravity surveys.
Yep.
I took part in a couple of them many years ago. I wish I knew more about it so that I knew what questions to ask the engineers whenever I was doing it. But we were doing the acoustics and the magnetometer readings on the vessel and the positioning and all of that. They said they had reference gravimeters in different locations around the area we were surveying.
Yep.
And I assume that was to be able to have a baseline, and it would measure the the moon and the effects of the moon and the other things that will affect the gravity over time?
Yeah, so you'll find that there are gravimeters break down into two general classes. There are the relative gravimeters, and they tend to operate continuously. So and they're generally in a class that is called spring gravimeters. What you're measuring is sort of the force applied to some sort of thickness and the change in that force. Sort of gravitational acceleration of a test mass. Um, uh, and they can be extremely precise, but they're very, very large and they're not very mobile. So what you generally do is you take the gravimeter, what are called absolute gravimeters. They make one measurement at a time, and that's an absolute measurement. So you've only got gravity at that particular point in time at that location. So they're usually based on dropping something. So you drop something, you measure gravity, you lift it up again, and you drop it again. So what you do is you take the mobile gravimeter and you bring it to a reference point near the relative gravimeter, and you calibrate them. You make sure that they're giving compatible results. And then you take so you make sure that the mobile gravimeter is accurate in comparison with the high precision, reference gravimeter, and then you take it away and you perform your measurements. Now, typically, tidal oscillations are relatively small in comparison to the signals you're trying to resolve in terms of mineral surveying and that sort of thing. So you could apply tidal corrections if you were really, really because they don't vary that much. So you can use the tidal corrections measured by the relative gravimeters to remove. You could take their tidal signal and just remove it from your mobile gravimeter signal, and that will give you a result. So that's generally how the people from my school went about their work.
Awesome. Yeah, I wish I would have known more about it at the time so I could have asked some more questions. What kind of accuracy you could? He was referring to absolute gravimeters that they were using, and what kind of can you? I'm assuming, or I think he told me that it could easily detect the changes in gravity due to the moon, but could it detect it influences by the planets and sun and everything too, or?
Solar and lunar tides are, comparable in amplitude, but the other planets I would think are too small.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah. So, but the sun certainly is significant enough that that you would need to consider that. But you can, again, you can correct for those signals, using your relative gravimeter data. You know what time you're making the observations, and you know what the tidal signal is going to be in that at that point.
I know they were really interested in our elevation data also from our GPSs also on the boat.
Yeah. That's extremely important because you need to know where you are relative to the geoid. Uncertainties in height are actually a big factor. So.
Right, that's why they were wanting us. We had, I think at the time we had 5 centimeter accuracy horizontals, which probably put it at about 10 or 12 centimeter vertical.
Yeah. So these absolute gravimeters are in fact extremely precise, and I'm not sure what type they were using. The Lacoste FG5 series is sort of considered the state of the art for these drop gravimeters. it's so sensitive that it can tell that gravity, it drops a test mass 20 centimeters, and it can tell that gravity is not constant over those 20 centimeters. You kind of need to correct for the fact that you're falling through a gravity gradient in that 20 centimeters.
I did read that. That is awesome.
Yeah. And the gravimeters that I'm studying up on now are called cold atom gravimeters, and they're sort of the next generation.
Yeah, that's what I was reading on.
Yeah, and they operate, so you supercool a cloud of atoms into what's called a Bose-Einstein condensate. You kick it into a chamber at sort of roughly uniform velocity, and then you perform laser interferometry on it. You apply a pion 2 laser pulse, then a pi laser pulse, and then a pion 2, and the phase separation in the populations of in the population of atoms gives you the acceleration that they experienced. But there are various complications of that, and those are sensitive enough that you actually need to correct for Coriolis effect. So the atoms are moving at 2.5 centimeters a second, I think, is what they're supposed to be, and the measurements take about 5 seconds to complete or whatever. They are actually sensitive to the rotation of the Earth in that time, so you've got to sort of remove that effect. And they're also sensitive to the gravity gradient, but you can correct for both those terms.
Yeah, I did read up on those, but I was not understanding much of it. So that actually clears up a few things that I didn't understand about it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, quick shout out to Mr. Malord out in the chat. Member for 22 months, and I thank you, sir. It says free money for Blue that he won't see. Yeah. That means I won't spend it either. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, there's
sorry, that all very technical.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, B-Ball.
Yeah, we just came from Jose's. We're having a go with Gary.
Oh boy.
How many walls of light did you encounter?
Nah, he was going hard using his rubber bands as evidence of anything.
Clive Wells showed why that entire line of argumentation is just completely false.
Well, actually, Gary came up with a new one today. It was for big things you need a big camera, and for small things you need a miniature secret camera. That was ace.
That's classic. That is classic.
The cameras you have to scale the camera down.
Yeah. Which I take it to mean you have to also scale the monitor down, so you need a little tiny monitor.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Just when you think you've somebody said it in the chat earlier. I can't remember who it was now. Just when you think you've made it idiot proof, nature makes a better idiot.
And then Lemon comes with, we have to scale down the photons.
How do you scale down a fucking photon? I don't get that.
Man.
He's talking about sort of the way, your resolution in comparison to the wavelength of the light you're using, but that's really only significant if you're talking about really tiny objects. So it's just idiotic nonsense.
Yeah, I think sampling theory says something like as long as the wavelength is double the size of the thing you're trying to measure, you're okay.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a very, very, Gary is a very, very weird individual. If you're just, because he doesn't entertain contrary arguments at all, he just doesn't pay attention to them.
No, he
But
doesn't.
And his argument to Chaiki was, "You think this, and you're wrong." He kept
yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to explain like linear relationships to him. Trike was trying to, about how when Polaris drops 1 degree and forever 69 or forever 69 miles, that's a linear relationship, and he thinks that the same thing would happen on a flat surface. That things would drop the same way.
Yeah. It won't.
So I've been toying with the notion of just ignoring his argument and maybe just agreeing with him and letting him have it. That way we can get him to talk about a different topic altogether. Because he seems to be stuck on one topic.
He's always been stuck on one topic, and
Yeah.
the problem is that it's completely unconnected to the shape of the Earth, like optics, and the behavior of cameras and what cameras detect and all of this sort of stuff is actually completely different from the shape of the Earth. It's completely unconnected. We have so much other data that tells us what we can achieve. It tells us what the shape of the Earth is.
Yep. Hey, shout out to the Triggered Limey for £5. I can't really think of what to write. Okay. Well, you wrote something. That's good enough. I thank you, sir. Yeah, they love to get off I mean, they can't stay on the road. They got to get off in the ditch real quick every time. You try talking to them about LIGO, which was their idea, right? Nice straight tube. You ought to be able to measure and compare the shape of the Earth compared to that thing. And they want to go talking about the mirrors and the crap that's hanging inside of the LIGO tube. Who cares? I don't care if that thing is packed full of fried chicken. It doesn't change the fact that the damn tube is straight. Okay, that's all we need to know.
Or they want to talk about they want to talk about the canal next to the tube, measuring down to the water.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, can you make the herring any redder?
Just ignore what LIGO actually does. Completely. Let's talk about its construction.
I love it when they start talking about the canal running next to LIGO. They're not bright enough to realize that that's LIGO India. That's not either one of the ones we have. There are no canals running next to our LIGOs.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one in India? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one that's got the damn canal running next to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got a kick out of the discussions you were having where they had to say that if it's suspended in such a way that it's not a plumb mirror, then it's no longer free hanging, like it's pulled taut, or like they think that these things were hanging by a single wire the entire time and could just spin around inside the tube. It was amusing to think that they had thought that.
Yeah. They hung it and they tied it off with a butterfly knot.
Yeah, the level of understanding about how a plumb bob works, and that's all it boils down to, is appalling. Have they never seen a plumb bob? It's got a little fixture, a little fitting up at the top. It's got a hole in it. You run the string through the hole, tie a knot in it. Great. Now the string is directly in line with the center of gravity of that damn plumb bob, right? Pull the string out of the hole, wrap it around the little fitting so it's off center, and tell me if the point of the plumb bob is still pointing straight down. No, it's not.
Right.
They have no clue what they're talking about. They could hang those damn mirrors at LIGO and make the face of them point any direction they want to. All you got to know is where the CG of the damn thing is.
Right, and the fact that they're adjustable is just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
It's awesome engineering that somebody put forth into that.
Oh, yeah. It's
Like, why wouldn't you make it so you could just, without even having to go all the way down there, tell it to move, and it would? That's awesome.
It's a phenomenal apparatus.
I'd love to hear one of those phone conversations that I think Rakia said he's called up there to talk to somebody. I would love to hear one of those phone conversations.
He's called a lot of people, supposedly.
Oddly enough, there's never any audio or anything to go along with it, just a story being told by Rakia.
Yeah.
Oh, according to Rakia, he called all over the University of Tennessee trying to find Cavendish. Couldn't find it. Not there.
That's incompetence right there.
I had a great laugh when Rakia said, or they said that Rakia had talked to the guard at the gate about how the name of the arms, they call them the X and the Y arm. And I'm thinking, okay, now wait a minute. Are you telling me that you're depending on the rent-a-cop at the gate to give you some technical information about LIGO? Really? Come on, man. Crazy.
And it's a red herring if they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, the level of arrogance that those two guys have is just unreal. Him and SE Montreal.
Yeah.
They are definitely a pair.
Yeah, they got all upset with me for referring to the arms the way LIGO refers to them, as the East and the West, or to be completely accurate, Southeast and Southwest. And a whole bunch of yuck about how East and West are not, perpendicular to each other. Yeah, no joke, guys. Really?
Yeah. It's a weird understanding. They'll do anything to not understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
So that facility that's in the one that's in India, did that facility measure the gravitational wave along with the other two as well at the same time?
I cannot answer that question. I'm not even sure if it's operational yet or not.
Oh, okay.
I know that it does actually. If you'll see, if you pull up on Wiki photographs of LIGO, you'll see one that shows a canal running down the side of it. But if you read the caption under it, it's LIGO India. There is no canal in Hanford, Washington. There is no canal in Livingston, Louisiana. But they get everything else wrong. Why not that too?
Well, I think them getting things wrong is a tactic, right? When you're dealing with anti-science people, it's like whack-a-mole. So you beat down argument after argument, and eventually you end up back at the argument that you started with. So they feel under no obligation to get anything right or to learn or to correct their understanding. Their goal is just to perpetuate the argument.
Yeah, I think also their goal is just to remain ignorant as possible. That way they can't answer any questions for their, you know, for their claims. But just make won't. Oh, we don't make any claims. That way I won't have to answer any questions about my claims.
What's worse than that is the height of dishonesty when you have people that are out there saying, I'm not a flat earther. But in the same sentence, proclaim level is horizontal and water is perfectly flat. But I'm not a flat earther. How disingenuous is that?
Ask where's the curvature?
That one amazes me. Don't know why they do that.
Because they know flat earther as a term holds some negative connotation, which it definitely should.
Yeah.
Regardless of how they feel about it or how other people feel about it, the term still fits if you think the Earth doesn't have any curvature. And that's all the Bevites.
I love it when one of them comes out and they try and have an argument, and all their entire argument is all the same. And then they claim that, oh no. So what if I'm using their argument? It's my argument too. Well, yeah, well you got your argument from all of them, or you got your argument from one person.
Yeah, the Earth is clearly not flat. It has terrain. What? Yes, we have mountains, Biff. Yes, we do.
So this is the other thing. So society as a whole relies on trust, communication, and cooperation. And the thing about the anti-science people, not just restricted to flat earthers, is that they don't have any trust. They refuse to allow communication to happen, and they refuse to cooperate. So that thing about, well, the Earth is not flat; it has bumps. That's a refusal to that's a refusal to communicate, right? You know what I mean by the phrase flat Earth. You know what I am trying to reference, and if you make me reference it in specific enough detail that that it is completely unambiguous, we will be here all day, having what should be a reasonable conversation. So they just use this as tactics to make sure that communication doesn't happen, and this is why so many of these anti-science arguments devolve into semantic speculations or philosophical contemplations of the nature of science.
Yeah, when they say that it's literally a straw man by definition, saying that you don't believe that there are hills and valleys, which is disingenuous at best.
Yeah, because you can even use that when they say, oh, well, you have to have a flat baseline to measure a triangle. Well, you say the Earth isn't flat, right? We have hills and valleys. So how does that work? Does that flat baseline lie along the surface with the mountains and the hills?
Yeah. it's an excellent point.
Would seem to be a problem, wouldn't it?
Yeah, keep seeming to mention to them that if it requires a flat horizontal baseline, then you can't use any of your tools anywhere near any hill anywhere. Everything has to be the ocean. You can't use your tools anywhere else.
Well, even the ocean is not flat, right?
Yeah, true that.
Yeah, we got
Can't
these.
use your tools anywhere.
Nope, we got these things called tides.
So, which means that you can't use, apparently celestial navigation just isn't possible. Great work, everybody. Except that it is possible and it has been used. I was rewatching From the Earth to the Moon the other day, and it was quite interesting to see, Buzz Aldrin using a sextant to get the position of the lunar craft that he was in while it was on its way. But apparently that doesn't work, and apparently you can't do it if you're not if you're not on a flat surface. Well, actually, that's not true. You can use it anywhere. You can even use a sextant when you're not even on Earth.
Yeah, those stars look exactly like they look right here on Earth. They're still in the same positions. How about that? Quite amazing.
It is quite amazing.
Yeah, that was their primary method of figuring out where the hell they were. That sextant.
Yeah. No, well, it was certainly an important one, and they needed to be able to check, and it required quite a bit of training to do. And I mean, this is yes, Jose, it was a built-in sextant.
Yeah, they had a periscope type thingy.
Yes. But it was nonetheless, celestial navigation was possible and indeed important for spacecraft. And it's, to claim that it's impossible unless certain conditions are met that clearly don't apply even on a flat Earth is ridiculous.
Well, that's a crazy argument that was generated by Quantum Eraser and Nathan Oakley.
I don't understand why anybody listens to a word those two say.
Yeah, it's amazing to me too. They're the ones that came up with this curved baseline crap. They've got a sextant confused with a protractor.
I mean, if we couldn't measure angles from curved surfaces, we wouldn't be able to build anything that had a curve on it.
Well, you're not measuring the damn surface anyway. You're measuring the angular separation between a point on the horizon and a celestial object, or two celestial objects.
You could replace that with the angular separation of an object from its reflection, or the angular separation of the object from the azimuth. If you've got an azimuthal sextant, there are plenty of ways of doing this that don't rely on being able to see the horizon.
That's right, like bubble sextants. Or artificial horizons that you can attach to a nautical sextant.
Yes.
There are lots of ways of doing it. The altitude angle is not usually what you're looking for anyway.
Yeah, it's a this is one of the things. They've never done it, right? They've never done it. They've never attempted it. They've never they have no idea about how to go about it. But that doesn't stop them being extremely emphatic about what's going on. And one of the earliest debates I was in, Brian's logic came on saying, trying to use his thing that, if you're registering a position in Cartesian coordinates, then the object you're describing must be rectangular. No, that's, a coordinate system is just an address book that tells you where stuff is relative to other stuff. It doesn't change the shape of stuff. It doesn't change the position of stuff. Changing coordinate systems, you can change between Cartesian coordinate system. You can change between the inertial fixed coordinate system or the terrestrial coordinate system, or you can use spherical polar coordinates, latitude and longitude. It doesn't matter what you do. You'll get the same results either way, and the objects will maintain their positions and motions relative to one another and their shapes, regardless of what coordinate system is being used. And he just doesn't understand. Yeah, Clive Wells brings up the Cartesian coordinate for a unit circle centered on the origin. The coordinate system doesn't mean anything. And they don't understand. They don't have any, intellectual grasp of what coordinate systems are even used for.
They're completely arbitrary. It's up to you. You pick any one you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. You're right. It's just an address book. That's all.
Yeah, and I mean, you can, it does give us, ability to mathematically attack relative, the problem of relative positions under certain circumstances, but that can lead to certain coordinate systems being more convenient for certain purposes.
Yeah, well, being the lazy types that we human beings normally are, we tend to pick the one that's the easiest to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going on about that early in the stream, talking about their total lack of understanding with respect to reference frames. And,
yeah, exactly.
And Coriolis, they cannot envision that for some reason or the other, and no matter how much talking you do to them, with them, they're not able to comprehend the idea that thing that is curving in a non-inertial frame of reference actually is curving in that non-inertial frame. It may be going in a straight line in another frame of reference. It may be motionless in another frame of reference. But all of those things are happening simultaneously.
Yeah, this is the point of relativity. All objects are motionless in their own frame of reference.
Right.
Right. I remember having an argument with one of your subscribers, rather protracted one that got quite heated, where he refused to accept that no object accelerates in its own frame of reference. It's trivially true. There's no acceleration from the object's frame of reference. But Einstein's point was that only objects in a particular class of frames of reference were right about what forces they were experiencing. So it's and Einstein's whole purpose in developing relativity was to develop a set of a representation of physics that would be valid regardless of which frame of reference you were in. One of the central principles is that we must be able to describe everything accurately regardless of the reference frame. That was what relativity set out to solve, set out to give us.
That whole idea is just over their heads for some reason.
Well, I mean, and the whole complaining that we don't teach relativity to kids. We also don't teach differential geometry to kids, which you really need to understand Einstein, what Einstein is even talking to. We don't give Tolstoy to 5-year-olds in their English lessons, or for literature reading, because they're not going to really grab it.
Gradients and vector fields.
Yes, gradients and vector fields.
Yeah, there are some prerequisites there. And that's
just in. Rakia thinks that water is fake. Carry on, like that never happened.
Water is fake, huh? What? Huh?
I just posted a thing. While you guys are having a wonderful, thoughtful, and very adult conversation, I'm going over and poking Rakia also. So, multitasking.
That's okay. You're allowed.
Five Wells feels the need to rub my face in the mess that I've made, and tells me that rather than referring to an object's frame of reference, I should say an object's rest frame. So he insists on educating me. Sorry, didn't mean to completely disrupt the conversation, but yeah.
Well, I go along with whatever either one of you guys says.
You just listen to what other people say.
Isn't rest frame and frame of reference really just a pair of synonyms?
Synonyms, yes, they are to some extent. And hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm not bad, Tony.
But Clive assures me that in the object's rest frame is better terminology, and I am prepared to believe him on this. So,
well, I guess it at least implies it's the frame of reference where the object is not in motion.
Yes.
And it specifically says that. So,
I mean, the thing is that once you've defined that frame of reference, there are an infinite number of other frames of reference.
Yes, I know.
That are in which the object is also not moving. It's just not at the origin. So it's anyway. But the Einstein's no, a rest frame can't rotate. If the object rotates, it will. You define a reference frame with reference to the object and a set of axes. If the object rotates, then the reference frame will rotate with it. So, you don't get around it that way. Anyway, it's Rakia is over there suggesting that the water doesn't look real.
What water?
They've always got some. They've always got some excuse for disregarding any optical evidence, and this is, I would start differently if I were trying to convince people. I would start with gravity because I think we can thump gravity. We can pretty much pummel them with gravity. And then I would move on to sort of, and gravity refutes a lot of their arguments. Then I would move on to non-visual forms of evidence. In particular, the fact that air pressure waves circle the Earth multiple times, for instance.
Yes, and the times of arrival really are telling as well, aren't they?
Yes, they are. We've got tens and tens of thousands of seismic events. We've got thousands and thousands of seismic stations. We're making observations all the time, and we've got lots of arrival times for different seismic phases. So we've got an immense amount of data that tells us that the Earth is just not flat.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, having repeatedly indirectly measured the curvature myself numerous times.
Using radar, or
using radar and targets at known heights.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To essentially check the radar horizon is where the radar horizon is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the radar horizon was always where the radar horizon was supposed to be, give or take the margin of error.
Yes.
And seeing as how the margin of error, seeing as how the difference between flat and curved with a target of 10,000 meters is 7,000 meters for the system I worked on, I think that's pretty conclusive evidence.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just, and yet, if you have you presented this evidence and had them say, "Oh well, somebody faked it to make it look like that"? They're not accusing you of lying. There.
I have indeed been told that they use the computer to insert the to make it look like that. The problem with that is that because of my trade specialization at the time, I actually knew the method of operation of every single circuit within the entire radar system to the component level.
Right.
And there were and I also happened to also know the display system that we used in our engineering department, because I'd previously done that before I started working on the radar. So yeah, nowhere for them to insert the magic.
Yes.
Unless I'm lying.
Which it seems quite weird. It's also futile, right? I mean, if you're using radar to detect a threat at a particular altitude, for instance, and you mobilize some response saying, well, it's at the what we spotted is at this altitude, and they go out and they look at the wrong altitude. How is this helping anyone? Because if you send out I'm extrapolating here, but if somebody sends out a plane to investigate something at a given altitude, and they get there at that altitude, and they don't find anything, what's happening? You, the radar operator, you say something's at 7,000, only a few thousand meters above the radar horizon. You correct for that. You get out there. I'm not sure that it all works. That's on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't. You don't intercept. Well, you might you might be at the same roughly the same physical location as the target in relation to the surface of the Earth, but you're definitely not going to be at the right altitude.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be at least 7 kilometers away vertically.
Yeah. It's, given the things that we can achieve and given the science that they rely on, we rely on radars all the time to safely navigate aircraft. And, there are, tens of thousands of aircraft journeys and arrivals every single day. And the safety of all of those is ensured because we understand that the Earth is spheroidal. We know how much fuel to put on the plane. We know how to navigate the plane. We know how to check the location and detect altitude for the plane. And these are quite sophisticated and rigorous processes that are done repeatedly by many tens of thousands of individuals on a daily basis. The concept that it's all being fabricated is just nonsensical.
Indeed. It's daft. Of course, my biggest problem with bringing radar up as a subject is the fact that I have no contemporaneous notes of the testing that I did on a regular basis, because of course they were all classified NATO secret at the time.
Yep.
And making unauthorized copies and removing them from the building would have been 20 years in prison.
Yes, would have gotten you in a bit of trouble.
You gentlemen have overlooked the obvious, though.
Have we indeed? Please
Have we
enlighten-
indeed?
They have put nanochips in the milk to control our minds, and the flat earthers are taking anti-chip medication, so they're not being indoctrinated and controlled like the rest of us.
Okay. Can I just confirm with you, George? When did they invent the nanochips?
Well, I would say the technology as far as line widths and that, where, we've gotten sizes down into the hundreds of nanometers. I mean, now we're down below 10 nanometers. We're like in the 5 to 6 nanometer range for line widths. But they got down to about 100 meters about 15 years ago or so, so I'd say probably about that time, you could start making nanobots and that sort of thing.
Okay. Because of course the time period I'm talking about here is approaching 40 years ago.
Well, it depends on line width. 40 years ago, or you're talking in the 80s, beginning of the 80s, and at that time, 78, I left graduate school, and at that time, when I joined, the order of 5 microns. Okay, so you're talking, 5,000 nanometers. And we're now down to about 5 nanometers. We've shrunk by a factor of 1,000 over that 40 years.
I pretty much knew that. I was kind of joshing with you a bit there, George, in so much as, how are they making the nanobots 40 odd years ago to fool us?
Oh, submicron.
Yeah, well, they couldn't back then.
No, submicron technology was the goal and ambition in the 80s. That was just a dream, out in the future somewhere.
Yeah.
And now that's ridiculous,
Yeah, I mean, to think about how far this has gone, in 78 when I graduated EE grad school, I mean, we were talking at that time, chips were on the order of 1,000 uh, um, bits, you know. And now look what we've got, you know, on one chip, we're over a terabyte, you know, and you know, 40 years ago, we're at a kilobyte, you know, we're well over a million, well, 1,000 squared, you know, area wise. So we've managed to reduce the areas on the chip by a factor of a million, you know, in that 40 years.
I'm just going to butt in here for a moment. I'm going to duck out at this point. Thank you very much for a wonderful chat, gentlemen. Blue in
Great,
particular.
yeah, great to have you, PhD Tony. Thank you for
Yeah,
dropping in.
take care, Tony.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And someday, you know, kind of figure out how those gravimeters work. You know, we know that it isn't due to gravity.
Right. I'll be working on that. Okay. Take care, gentlemen.
Take care.
Good night, Tony.
Bye, Alan.
But yeah, I mean, you know, you look at the cost per bit or the cost per transistor, you know, the reduction, it's just phenomenal what we've accomplished in 4 decades. You know, if automobiles followed the same thing, you'd be probably buying a Ferrari, you know, for $5-10.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Moore's law certainly worked for a long time, didn't it?
Well, it still is. I mean, there's been clever techniques where we're still right on, you know, the Moore's law, which is, you know, the densities and the speeds double about every 18 months, and we're still right on track on that. You know, people keep coming up with clever schemes to keep us on the proper slope. You know, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But we're soon going to hit our heads. There's no. Well, I shouldn't say that because there's always some clever people out there that find some way to um, circumvent hitting our heads. You know.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, I think we're getting close with the current paradigm of electronics for
Yeah, but you know, there's
Moore's
a
law
thing.
slowing up.
Yeah, but the next step, of course, will probably in the next generation or two, we'll probably still be on track because you know we're starting to go to, you know, 3D chips where we're you know, not only is it an area thing, now we're talking about volume, you know, putting layers upon layers, stacking
Yeah.
chips, you know.
Yeah.
So and then of course people are working on organic um, you know, chips, biological chips, and that would be a real game changer if they make that happen.
Yeah, I guess what I was really trying to say is we're gonna have to have some really clever stuff come along to keep it going, and I'm sure it will. It's just I don't know that we necessarily know exactly what that's going to be yet.
No, we never do. You know, just like with magnetic hard drives, you know, as I remember be attending the Comdex shows in the 90s, you know, the big computer shows here in the States that were held in Las Vegas at the beginning of the year. And oh gosh, in the 90s, they, you know, we're talking about magnetic hard drives, you know, reach the limit. We can't get any denser. But then they came up with, you know, partial read, signal processing, and that sort of thing, where partial read most likely had type read technology with signal processing. God, you know, look where we're at. Magnetic hard drives are so viable. I mean, they're, a handful of terabytes on one platter. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the late 90s, I did a few programming courses at IBM's campus at Hursley in Hampshire, and and next to the canteen, they've got a little museum, and going in there and looking at a 12-inch floppy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And,
yeah, I have some of the 8-inchers from back in the mid 70s, early 70s. The 8-inch floppies that HP had, dual 8-inch floppy drives.
Well, of course, they are still in use, aren't they? Although, of course, the world's largest consumer of 8-inch floppy disks is the United States Air Force.
I can believe that. I want to correct something I said earlier, too, about LIGO. LIGO India is not up and running. The one I was thinking about is LIGO Virgo, if you see it on the YouTube screen right now, YouTube feed. That's in Italy. That's the one that's got a canal that runs beside it. None of the U.S. LIGOs have canals next to them. The southeast arm at Livingston has a ditch beside the thing, but if you look on Google Earth, there's no water in it. I'm sure at times of the year it may have water, but it's not a running stream or a canal or anything like that.
Yeah, it's too bad. Well, you can't get in there anyway. I guess Jesse and Larry and others tried to get permission to go and survey the LIGO tubes, but that doesn't look like that's going to happen.
I mean, why would they allow that?
Right. Well, it was on a whim. They were, hoping that maybe they could get permission to do that, but.
Yeah. I think the only question that really needs to be answered is that tube a consistent height above the concrete pad or not?
Oh, I'm looking back in the chat. I was working outside and missed a lot of this stuff. Genesis says, I'm listening to Bev now where he tries to ridicule George with Con with George. Wonder what that was all about.
No, who knows? And furthermore, who cares?
Yeah. Well, it goes to show that I'm still relevant in his world. Thanks, Bev. I love this. Harry Warp, you're talking about Bevians, and Harry Warp posted the head of Homer Simpson with a little monkey in there clapping two cymbals together. That's how the mind of the Bevians work. I love that photograph of what is that, Mount Rainier? The side-by-side comparison. viewing it at two different distances. That would be at 7:46 your time, 6:46 mine in the live chat.
Oh yeah, and Rocky right underneath of it saying it's the water doesn't look real.
Yeah.
That particular mountain has gotten so many flat earthers into trouble. Gary Wybenga said that the sun never goes below the clouds, and then Stingray made an awesome shot of. Here, actually, I'll post it. This is a really fantastic one. So there's the mountains, and my phone crashed. Discord on mobile is just kind of a mess.
You know, even with computers, it gets to be a mess at times.
All right, here we go. All right, so
Oh, yeah, that one, sure.
Yeah, the photograph with the sun hitting the casting the shadow up to the clouds, and all the Stingray did was take some elevation data, plop it out there on a texture of like a satellite photo of the Earth, and cast the light upward onto a plane that's over top of the mountains, and that's all he needed to do to reproduce the shot.
Yeah. Were you around, what was this, well over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, when, what's his name? Chris Berry was trying to reproduce this in his garage with reflected light off the cement floor?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, that's a different example. I know somebody had one where they tilted it. Where they took a surface, it was near the top of their doorway, and then they tilted it a little bit, and the light came in and hit it because it was tilted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
you
But yeah,
gotta
I
love
think-
the push-ups that they try to that they go through trying to come up with alternative explanations.
Yeah, I think Gary Wybenga said, no, the mountain is actually above the clouds in the photo that I have posted here, that he said that. And I was like, just no, Gary. Just no.
Yeah.
So the shadow is coming downward onto the clouds then in his world, huh?
Uh-huh. I just can't with these people.
Just trying to figure out a way.
The claim I always liked were you get those unusual photographs where the clouds, because of the glare of the moon, appear to be behind the moon or going behind the moon. They're claiming, that the moon is.
Oh yeah, exposure.
Those
I
are
actually
always
have a photograph that I use against these kinds of claims.
Yeah, I finally got the picture up on YouTube for everybody.
Oh yeah, that Stingray's modeling of that was excellent looking. I had to take a screenshot of it right away while he was doing it.
Let's see if I can show that. That's this one, right?
The black and white one. Well,
the
it's
Stingray
color,
thing. Yeah, the Stingray thing is impressive because the outline of the shadow is a very good match.
Oh yeah. Yeah, all he had to do was elevation data and a light source from below it, and put something above it for the light to cast onto, and that was it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh yeah, and when they bring up those sun inside the clouds kind of things, or moon inside the clouds, when I put up that plastic bag, one, they always ask me, why are you out of weed? Two, the light, I ask them if the light is in front of or behind the bag. Obviously it's behind the bag, but you can only see the light and not the bag. Which illustrates it, but they just don't get it. they don't want to get it, really.
Well, that's the deal. They get it.
You would have to hope so, because it makes perfect sense, but they don't want to get it. It just, ugh.
No, they don't. Simple denialism. They call us model afflicted. No, they're just simply afflicted.
Yeah. Well, they're just lacking in many respects. Corn. So, want a treat?
See Terry sitting in here. Hello, Terry. Terry may have gone back to sleep.
Probably. It's quite early for Terry, isn't it?
Should be.
Oh no, middle of the
should be
day.
About 10 a.m., I think.
Yeah.
Look at this. They're still posting these memes over on Flat Earth servers. They still think that's valid. If a helicopter was hovering, it should make it to the other side of the Earth in 12 hours.
That's
my God.
That is so damn dumb.
That looks like an SC Montreal type meme.
They're using the old Android emoji icons, which is weird. This must be an older meme then, but still.
Yeah, that was pretty much all started by Oakley, wasn't it? This thing about Earth spinning underneath you.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say Eric Dubay definitely mentioned it before Oakley did, but I can't be entirely sure. I can't give you a source for that.
It's in 200 proofs. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's in 200 proofs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Probably
He at least
is.
does it to hot air
But Oakley
balloons.
was the one that really popularized.
Well, of course, the biggest problem with 200 proofs is it's far from it, and yeah, there's multiple repeats of the same thing, isn't there?
Oh, yes. Rhetoric and Discourse is the name of a channel that did a very deep dive into most of those. I want to say they got through about 130 of them before they stopped making the series. But
Yeah.
there was at least one of the videos in that series where 30 of them were in a single video because 28 of them were the same thing.
Yeah, and of course as he got towards the end, it would be 137. This is a repeat of 2.
Yeah, that's exactly what he ended up doing. 80 is a repeat, or 95 is a repeat of 80. Only in this one, because there was actually 2 of them where they copied the exact details as an example verbatim. Like I want to say it was 80 and 95 in that list of proofs were identical, like with no changes. Or maybe the numbers are a little bit wrong there. 80 and 97, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean Hawkins posted something 5 minutes ago that I've always felt to be true. He says that flat earthers are dishonest and jealous of intelligent people and intimidated by science and knowledge, so they formed a little club where everyone is equally stupid and dishonest, an echo chamber where they can claim to know it all and be praised for their stupidity. You always hear this, they do seem to be intimidated by education, and it seems to me like they failed at high school or something, or they're intimidated by people that did better than them in school because they're always talking about uh, how uh, education is unnecessary and educated people are indoctrinated. It's so foolish. And I believe Sean is correct, that they're just jealous of people that succeeded where they failed.
I think he's right about that. Absolutely right about that. Shout out to Timo Lynch, €2. As everybody knows, memes are science. Yeah, that seems to be where they get a lot of their science from too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we want to close the loop on this one, I've actually got a meme I may have stolen from another person. Or actually, I definitely stole from another person about science. Let's see, there it is.
Yeah, what refutes science? Better science.
What doesn't refute science? Your feelings, your religion, your favorite politician, your half-baked opinion after watching 2 YouTube videos.
I got a kick out of this morning when I signed on. Was Genesis, I think, had posted something, and I really liked it. It was let's see, what say it was. Um, every time you try to make some, every time you make something idiot proof, nature makes a better idiot.
Yep. Nature is really good at making idiots. That is very, very true, George.
Yeah, and I said, well, yeah, we kind of see that happening in real time in Bev's server. It's the evolution of idiots is going at an unnatural speed there.
Well, they love to gather together and uneducate each other. And they're pretty good at it.
Oh my God. Okay, I gotta bring this meme over because this is, wow, this is horrible.
Where's it coming from?
It came from Geo, or not Geo himself. I'm sorry, his server. Somebody on there. There's not a single minute of Earth footage filmed from the moon, it says, on all of the Apollo missions, which is hilariously wrong. I mean, I would count the photographs, the many, many, many photographs of Earth taken from the moon as evidence from there, but I mean, come on.
Well, that does seem to be a common thing that you find from the flat Earth side is just making blatantly wrong statements. One that I hear quite often is no one's measured the curvature of the Earth. That's so blatantly wrong. It's been measured many times by many different people.
Well, if you say it with a great deal of confidence, And
Well, that is it. I mean, you repeat a lie often enough, you start beginning to believe it yourself.
oh, that's Oakley's strategy. He's been doing his housekeeping questions for how damn long now?
It reminds me of a church service, is you have the litany that you go through.
Oh yeah.
And then say, the Lord's Prayer, and Oakley kind of follows that same sort of format.
Well, that's what they do every morning. And sometimes every night. The same thing over and over again. And I believe that's the theory. If you tell that lie often enough, people begin believing it. Yeah, the Triggered Limey says they also say Cavendish experiment's never been repeated. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dubé. That was enlightening. Couldn't prove it by me, by golly.
You'd have to ask him to revise 200 proofs now, won't you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that one floored me. NA for $6.66. The problem is that Flurfs want a 24,000 mile long tape measure. Amen, brother.
And unfortunately, that wouldn't quite go far enough.
Yeah,
Spec it out for exactly 24,000 miles, you're going to have not enough.
Yeah, you're going to be about 901 miles short. Yeah, it's phenomenal. You want to say these people can't be serious. This is they've got to just be fooling around. Unfortunately, I'm afraid quite a few of them really are serious. But, man.
Someone ought to point out to Oakley and a lot of these flat earthers that say, where's R? Well, you can measure the diameter of the Earth, has been done. You can do it with neutrinos. Neutrinos pass through matter, and you can time them going through from one side of the Earth to the other, and get what the distance is. Don't have to drill a hole through the Earth. The neutrinos do it just naturally.
Oh, my Lord. Something so simple as Eratosthenes done at 2 different points at the same time tells you the shape of it and the size of it. It's still a super easy way to do it.
But they have to reject it and call it silly, even if it isn't. They have to say that sticks and shadows can't prove anything, even though you can definitely get a measurement from it.
Sure.
Oops, that's not bad.
I still have failed to understand the whole idea of denying a spherical planet. Why that is so necessary? Is it, because of their convoluted interpretation of the Bible? I've never really fully understood the necessity of having to have a flat Earth.
I think it is a biblical thing for a significant number of them. The rest are just con artists, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, and I thought it would be worth pointing out that to show the actual shape of the surface, you really need to do the sticks and shadows test at 3 locations.
Well, that's why different times was mentioned, because it shifts your measurement while you're making it. You got more data that way.
Well, what are you calling 3 locations? The subsolar point and 2 others, or 3 others?
Yeah, sorry, two others that are not equidistant north and south of the subsolar point.
All right. When I spoke about that, 2 points at different latitudes and the subsolar point, which you've got to have, are all that you need to show that this thing has got to be spherical, or nearly so.
One of the points doesn't necessarily have to be the subsolar point. It's just done for convenience.
That's right. It's easy to identify. Use the equinox. Use an equinox. That's what Bob the Science Guy and I did. And then you can just measure your distance from the equinox, from the equator. And Bob and I were about 10 degrees of latitude apart from each other, 9 degrees or so. And it just doesn't work on a damn flat surface. Unless you believe the sun is at 2 radically different altitudes all at the same time.
Well, how much momentum and where you are, mutually exclusive much.
How much what now?
Sorry, Blue. It's getting late here. I was just sort of, the fact that you can't necessarily know how fast you can either know how fast you're going or where you are, but not both at the same time for certain things. So, maybe the sun could be in both places at the same time. We just wouldn't notice. But I don't believe that at all. I was just trying to put my blurb head on. And of course, I'm making up lies, so it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, now I understand. And no, just no.
Well, I was just trying to find some sort of argument.
It simply will not work. Cannot work. Well, Alan's getting tired. We've been streaming for 2 hours and 23 minutes. We've had a bit of fun. I'm thinking about calling it an evening. I haven't had anything to eat yet, and it's already 8:30 here, so maybe time to say good night to our YouTube friends.
Yeah.
Still got 56 watching out there. Hey, thanks everybody. I appreciate everybody showing up. This was just a quick impromptu thing. No plan whatsoever. And that seems to be what works out usually anyway. So I'll tell you what, we'll say goodnight to the YouTube folks. And any and everybody's welcome to join the voice chat here in Discord. Let's see if I can put the Discord link back out there one more time. There you go. So join up and chime in. We'll be happy to have you. All right, everybody. Say goodnight to YouTube.
Good night,
Good night,
all.
YouTube.
Good night, YouTube.
Night.
See you later.
It's all right.